This is the Piston II puzzle by Felix Ure. This one has been so highly anticipated. It's been on pre-orders all year and is finally here. This one is a super heavy solid brass puzzle. The objective is to free the metal ball bearing from the end here. We tried to film a live solve video of this the first time solving it. It's basically unwatchable. There's too much detail in it that needs to be shown. So instead, we're going to show you the full solution video now in this one. But first, I just want to run through a couple of details of the puzzle. Piston II is a follow-on to the Piston puzzle, which was released, I believe, about 3 years ago, but it's only similar in name and shape. It's got the same cylindrical shape, but the solution is completely different. It's the 5th release from Felix, a really highly regarded premium puzzle maker based here in the UK. All his puzzles are UK made, and he is the originator of the Titan puzzle, which is always the one that is my go-to. That is the hardest puzzle out there. No way that I could personally solve it, but I was actually really happy I was able to solve this one. The solution time for this one took around about an hour when I did it for the first time. It's got a couple of fiddly sections to it, but I think once you've got the idea, then you just need to follow through and get the steps in the right sequence in order to be able to solve it. Price-wise, this will set you back £220, so it's not a cheap puzzle at all, but you can feel in the weight of it, there is a lot of brass involved, and I think the machining was quite difficult. I think it actually led to some delays, having to work with some different machinists to get this just right and get everything working as it should. So inside, you can see there's several moving components. We've got the section that comes out the top of the piston here. We can spin that around in either direction. Although if you spin it around in one direction, it seems to be able to move the other piece inside there. If we spin it in the other direction, it doesn't seem to work. We've got some balls trapped in the bottom half section of the piston, which you can see is pushing against a spring down the bottom here, but we can only push it so far because the only leverage we've got is until this piece is fully inside, and then we can't go any further than that. We can actually remove this piece entirely. If we completely unthread it, we can remove it. You can see inside there's a hole, the ball sitting just at the top here, but we can't seem to actually get it out. It seems to be held in place probably by a magnet, and we can see the internal piston here as well. So we've got a bit of a hole inside this section, and we can thread this piece back on top. So my initial thought was that maybe the ball bearings need to be dropped into the housing somehow. If we spin it around and then position it in a certain way, perhaps there was holes within the housing that we could slide this up and down and get them into those positions. But I wasn't too sure what that was actually going to achieve. When I worked out that you can completely unscrew this end, so the internal gap there leading up to the ball bearing, I kind of thought perhaps we need to try and release these balls and use those to push the ball out. And you can see there's actually a hole either side here of the opening that we can view it through, and that looks just about the right size to drop a ball through. The next step was to actually realize that these balls are positioned at different lengths along the piston, and it seems like one is actually really not too far from being releasable, so we can push it down, and we've only got a slight gap there that we need to be able to get it along in order to release it from this hole. So therefore we need to be able to somehow extend our pushing power. And in order to do that, we're going to need to get these two pins that we can see rotating around to line up. And if we can do that, then we can extend it rather than pushing this far. We can get it to join up like this and push that extra bit further. So let's have a little bit of a closer look at that. So we've got the pin attached to this end of the piston. If we spin it around, you can see it's actually pushing on the pin at the bottom end of the piston. So we've got the two there, and we can push them against each other, and that's obviously going to give us that extra bit of distance to push this section down. So there's a couple of observations that you want to make straight away. You can see that there's a piston piece sliding up and down in here. We can also control this one that we've looked at earlier, sliding it up and down. And if I spin it around, you'll notice that there's some balls or ball bearings seem to be stuck in this element of the piston. You'll also see just here that there's a little peg, a little screw that sits off that bottom one. There's also one on the top one, so you can see I'm pushing one into the other there. And actually, in order to rotate this bottom piston around, we need to get the pegs to touch each other, and then we're rotating. We can only rotate in one direction because the other direction is unscrewing this piece. So the first step requires you to get one of these balls out. You can see there's a hole at this end, there's a hole at this end, and if we push one into the other, so if I line this up, so I've got the two pegs touching each other, that's going to give us maximum push down this end. This piece is fully depressed. You can see it's not quite enough to release this ball from that hole. But the next observation you'll make is that the balls are positioned at different lengths along this piece here. So this one is actually the closest to this hole, which means if we pull this back, We're now going to have to get the two pegs to align at just 90 degrees beyond this point. So that means we just need to tip it down slightly this way, find the peg for the top piston. You can see it coming into view there. So we line it up at 90 degrees about here with the other one. Push it. You can see the ball is now positioned so that we can release it if we turn this upside down. We've released the first ball there from the chamber. And this takes a bit of confidence here to actually follow through this, but what we need to do is we need to put this ball now into the hole down the bottom. So obviously you might realize what's going to happen here. We're going to use that ball to give us an extra little bit of length to get the next piece out of the piston. So we need to spin it around here. This one here, the silver one that's actually a slightly different color, is the next one. And if you can see through this channel here, we've got the peg sitting at the bottom, so 180 degrees from the top here. We're going to position the ball just behind it. So this might be quite tricky to see, but we need to get everything lined up. So we've got to have the silver piece, so when we push it down, it's going to come out of the hole. Then we need to have the peg sitting along the bottom channel. We're going to have the ball in between the pegs, so we're going to bring that one around so you can see that's giving us the extra length just there. Everything's got to be lined up pretty precisely in order to do this, otherwise it can be a little bit fiddly. So hopefully that is just right. If I tip it over, and now we've released the second piece, which isn't in fact a ball bearing, but we've got this kind of cylinder shape here. So you might think you just do the same thing again, but it's actually impossible to fit the silver piece between the two pegs. So what we're going to need to do instead is to line it up. So we need to find the next piece that we're going to remove here. So that one looks a little bit higher. So it's this one here, which looks like another ball bearing. And this time, instead of lining up the two pegs beside each other, all we're simply going to do is to get the silver piece and one of the pegs lined up correctly. If we give them a push in exactly the right position. I don't know if there's a better technique for this than what I use, but it does tend to be a little bit of just patience, trying to get everything in exactly the right sequence, and then there we go. We've got our second ball, our third piece all together, and now there's only one piece left to try and release, and then you must think that at that point you can do something in order to solve this puzzle. So the aim of this puzzle, of course, is to free that marble at the end of the top piece of the piston. And some of you probably have guessed what we're going to need to do. We're going to have a look now and see about this final piece. So my idea to try and release this one originally involved the silver piece, which we need to try and now release from here. My original thought was if we get the silver piece to lock out this section here, that will give us enough room between the two pins that we can position the two balls between the two pins. That will give us enough leverage to push this all the way down. We pull out the silver piece, push it all the way down, and hopefully that will free it. After a couple of attempts of doing that, I realized it was actually really, really tricky to get these two balls to stay between the two pins. So my next thought was perhaps if I could push this down and get one of the balls to lock it out. So this is possible if you put the ball in and then push it very, very slowly and steadily, just until that ball is starting to half drop into the hole, and then retract it. And you can see now we've managed to use that ball to lock it out. That's going to be enough space to fit the silver piece back in. Okay, so now it's locked out, this section here. What we've got on the inside is the silver piece, then the ball. And if we're going to line those up all down the bottom, just here, I've got the peg coming in behind. So that will hopefully give us enough leverage to get this final piece out here. This section is the hardest of the whole puzzle. Everything's got to be exactly lined up. And it's very easy for this just to skew slightly out of alignment, meaning you can't get the final ball out. I'm going to let that one drop in. That's going to make our life easier here. We're going to push it down. You can see it looks like everything is lined up nicely. We just need to tip this over. There is the final ball, just released from the top there. So now we have almost solved this puzzle. So with this ball out, what we're going to do now is just to release everything else from inside the chambers. Then we just need to release that first ball again, which we allowed to drop back in. So if we just get that up into the correct position, push it down, And there we go. So now we have all these pieces. We just need to work out how to release this little ball from the end. So you might have already worked this out, but let's go through it. So we're going to unscrew this section here. So take that completely off. We can try placing all the pieces in here, but that's not really going to work for us. So there's a section here with a gap. We can place these in, so it's the 3 balls first, then the silver piece, which is going to stick a little bit out the top. We place the top back on. I'm just going to screw that down. This final ball bearing is held in place with a magnet, and all we're going to do is we're going to use all those pieces to push against the magnet. It should be enough to then pop this piece out, and that is the Piston II puzzle solved. So there we have it, Piston II, that is the solution to it. Let me know what you think. In order to put it back, you're just kind of reversing everything. Those first couple of steps are going to be quite hard, and then everything goes back quite nicely. So I would say probably the easiest of the releases from Felix that I've tried to date. Really like it though, really cool premium puzzle. As always, I'll leave a link for that if you want to check it out any further. Thanks so much for watching though, and I'll see you next time for more puzzles.